Sebastian. So welcome from my side as well. So I'm indeed Essi Koskela, and I work as an enterprise informatics consultant at Certara. So today I am talking about D360 and especially how it can be extended and how it works as a data engine for your organization. Sorry, I'm having troubles to switch the slide. Okay, let's see. Okay. So let's jump right into D360. So what is D360 in the first place? So mostly when we talk about D360, we think about the desktop application that supports research workflows and enables access to data, and also has flexible analyzing capabilities for small molecules in particular. Or we have also extended to sequence-based modalities. And with the application, you can build queries and to access all your research organization's data. You can share those queries and build data sets and informational data views based on that data. So what are our goals as the software provider? So we really want to serve the needs of the scientists and not only enable to build workflows, but make those workflows fully automatable. And of course, when they are automatable, the consistency in repeating those analyses improves, and you can reach your analysis goals faster. And what we are really aiming at, and especially focusing on today, is how the software is extensible and also configurable. So all of our capabilities we try to make as flexible as possible, that they can be adapted to your needs. And that configurable is also allowing you to present data from multiple aspects. So not only focusing on small molecules, but also looking at project level or batches, or how your compounds are manufactured, and analyzing those aspects of your processes. And we are also aiming at reduce the costs associated to the IT infrastructure, that the maintenance cost would be reduced. And that's also part of the having a flexible platform that you can focus on one central data engine that you can then extend as needed. So specifically in this webinar, I'm going to show you some examples how D360 functionality can be extended specifically through the REST API, and also provide you an idea of how D360 facilitates research workflows in data science. So data science workflows are coming more and more prevalent with the rise of AI and also popularity of machine learning, and it's really establishing itself. So if we just focus on the desktop application, it's very hard to see how it fits to data science workflows, but I'm going to show that actually it fits quite nicely there. So with that note, I'm going to review the data access capabilities and also the data sharing and collaboration aspects, specifically with the mind of data science workflows, but also in general. As I mentioned here, normally D360, we think about the client application and all the pretty crafts that you can do with that. And I'm going to show you also the client application, but what I'm really actually would like to focus on is the application server side. I'm not going to show that because it doesn't look like much, but it actually does most of the heavy lifting in terms of the data accessing and also query execution. So here, this is the overall overall picture of how the whole of D360 looks like. So there is the client application and then the application server side. And between that is the REST API, which is the communication layer, and that's the focus of today's webinar. So through the REST API, you can actually build other applications or processes based on the application server. And the application server is then connected to the D360 user database and all the data systems that you configure it to be connected to. So as of extension capabilities, the first extension is actually the flexible configuration options. So you can add as many data systems as you like. These are usually databases or relational databases, but they can also be web services, or now there's also cloud database systems that we are also extending to. So there's not really so much limitation in that extending in that direction. And then in terms of extending the client side of that, we have a plugin framework that we have developed that enables to extend the client application functionalities that I'm just going to mention here, but that's not, I'm not going to cover that today. And also there's another extension that is the calculation server, which I also briefly cover. So then going to today's really the beef that I'm going to share with you. So first of all, a little bit of introduction to the D360 REST API, and just to give you an idea what is the REST API and how does it stand in all this. Then I'm going to give you a short overview of the query self-service. So what is the benefit of having such a data engine and query building capabilities. Then I'm going to show you that data science workflow that reads from D360, but also pushes data back to 3D60. So you get an idea of how it would work if you have data scientists that want to do modeling and model development. And once they have those models, there's also the D360's calculation server and caching that then can enable sharing those models in a user-friendly way to all these 360 users. And visualization is very important in collaboration and communication of the data. So I'm going to show you also how to use the REST API to extend the visualization options and also how it fits to the data science workflows, but also to existing D360 users. And hopefully we will have plenty of time for questions in the end, and then a short summary that what we covered today. So yeah, let's get back to the high-level architecture of D360. So as I already pointed out in the previous slide, the REST API sits between the client and the application server. So the REST API, REST actually stands for representational state transfer. It doesn't really mean much as itself, but it's just a description of the architectural style for the program-to-program communication. So an API stands for application programmable interface. So what it really is, it's a standard of how programs can communicate with one another. And it's so established in the web application world that it's really kind of an industry standard there. So what we have developed is actually then moving the D360 client application to communicate solely with the server through the REST API. So that means that when you have access to the REST API, you can actually do pretty much everything that you can do with the client application, but just with a programmable interface. So not only does the REST API offer all the client endpoints, but also it has a few additional endpoints for external workflows. And actually, we are open to develop new endpoints if that's required for some applications. Why would you use the D360 REST API in contrast to just accessing the databases themselves? So there's actually quite a lot of benefits to that. So you get the benefits of the data virtualization layer, and also then you can communicate with the D360 application server directly. So that means that also D360 users can view what you are doing in the D360 application server side. So a little bit of the API history. So this is actually quite recent that we have exposed all the API endpoints to offer increased flexibility for D360-based development. And one key point is also that we have enabled is service tokens for external programs and scripts, which is a very easy access to the API that is offered to all users. And all users can also generate those service tokens and manage them. So the access is very simple, and then you can really do what you have ambition to do. So then thinking about the data virtualization layer and what does that do and how it relates to the query self-service. So I'm gonna actually at this point go to D360 and talk a little bit about why would you want to build a D360 query if you could also if you would have the technical capabilities of accessing the databases themselves. Here, if we go to D360, our first view is the D360 dashboard. So here I have a couple of searches that are important for me, and they reside in different projects. So projects are usually connected to certain workspaces. So workspaces is one level of control that you can have to divide your data so that not everyone can access or view that. So you can have queries in a certain workspace and only people that are added to that workspace can access those queries. So then let's view one of specific query that we are going to use in this webinar. So this is the CSAR kinase essays. And let's open the query and just look at it a bit. So the data virtualization layer essentially produces a data catalog, which is a view that you can compile to show the data in an understandable format and also show the items that you want to show. So this is also a layer of security if you want to keep some database tables omitted from users. So that just means that you don't have to expose them in the data catalog. From the user perspective, this data catalog also offers a good overview of the data that is available. So here we could, for example, search for more essays. So here if we search with the CSARC, we can see that one of the essays has that mentioned. And if you still think that you want to go directly to the databases, I can actually show you what kind of query you should build. And it's here. So it's quite extensive. So theoretically, you could write all this by yourself, but it's quite a lot of work. And also thinking that if you need to use different databases, you would also need access credentials for all of those databases. But with D360, you can just focus on having your D360 account, and that the database access is then controlled with the D360 layer. Another benefit of this is that data scientists might not be the domain experts of the data. So with D360, you could also have the scientists build the data query that would be used in modeling. So the scientist can control that only the most relevant data is included in the modeling, which then is then provided to the data scientists. So the control of access and having one access point is quite beneficial, and there's also other options for controlling the security. So we also have D360 Partner, which is for partner use, and then the workspaces to really organize your queries for the teams that need them. Then let's go to a bit more into detail to data science workflows. So how does it work retrieving data from D360, and also if you need to then provide data to D360. So in this cycle of processing data, building models, and exploring data, D360 can really help in the process part, but also in the exploration part. And the building models is then outside of our scope, so that would be then any programming language that you use in your organization, or for example, platforms like Nine. So first, let's look a bit about the processing data and how does D360 help there. So the processing data is so prevalent that they even talk about the 80-20 rule of data science, which means that the 80% of data scientists' time and effort is actually spending in collecting, cleaning, and preparing the data for analysis. And only 20% is left for the modeling itself and the part that they actually are interested in. So that's quite a lot of time that is then wasted on things that could be automized. And there's D360 is really focused on essay data and research data. So we have developed already some data cleaning practices that are helpful for data scientists as well. So here there's I mentioned, for example, unit handling and conversion. So if assay data is registered in different units, D360 can recognize that one entry is in micromolar and the other one is in nanomolar, and these can still be aggregated correctly. Then handling of data types, so that columns are already labeled that they are numeric, text, or date. And aggregation practices are also a big influence in data science modeling and insights that you get in there, get from there. So aggregation is also can be controlled in D360, and that's can be controlled in the catalog building, but also by the user specifically. And we handle assay results and conditions, so in a way that makes sense to scientists, and also modifiers can be handled. And I'm actually gonna show you an example of this. So let's go back to our query, and I'm actually going to run this so that we can take a closer look of the resulting dataset. So we get our molecules, and we get a few visualizations that help scientists to make conclusions out of the data. And we have different activities against different targets. And here we can already see one modifier value. So that means that the assay data was registered with is greater than. So in computational workflows, this is quite an annoying entry, but I can show you how it is handled then with the REST API. So I will at this point show you some Python code. Don't panic. I will go through this very slowly, and you don't have to understand everything that is going on here, but hopefully this will give you an idea of how this works. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna run a D360 query from Python and download the results. I'm going to do some k-means clustering, and then I'm going to upload those cluster numbers to D360. So here I'm actually not, I don't know what raw API is, but I'm not going to show you that. I have a module here that is a custom module for our API that is available on request, and that contains some helpful wrappers and functions that make this code a little bit easier to read. So first I'm going to authenticate. So that's the service token part. And then after I authenticate and select which D360 application server I'm using, I can actually then look at the workspaces available for me. I'm going to run this so we can see that we are now looking at the workspace API training where my query already was that I was showing. One tricky thing in using the API is that we have to use internal IDs. So here we have to find out this ID. You can actually see them in the client as well. I can maybe show that now. So if we open our API training workspace, we are looking at the CSAR kinase assays. And here we see the internal IDs as well. So our workspace is 364. And in that 364 workspace, we have items, and then we want to find our query template that we want to run, which is 365. So I have written this function that downloads the query results. So it runs the query, shows you that it's running, and then it's going to save the results as a file, and it's not going to delete the results from our workspace. So if we do this, it gives the query a request ID. It says that it has run successfully, and we have downloaded the results. And if we go back to D360 and refresh our workspace, we can see that we already also have the dataset result here. So then if we start from this dataset file in Python and read the first few lines, this is the view that we have then on the same data that we had. So here the modifiers are handled so that you get a modifier column and then the numeric column. So you don't lose the information that if it has a modifier, but you can also have a column that has the numeric value only, which is very handy if you do calculations. So now we have downloaded the data from D360, and we do what data scientists then do, so a lot of calculations. Here I have a very small example, and if you know anything about machine learning, you would see right away that this is pretty much nonsense, but we are not going to worry about that now. We get clusters with 10 clusters and cluster numbers for each molecule. So then we get to the uploading data part. So then this works with annotations. So as a first step, we create the annotation set. So we are going to put it in the same workspace as we are working on. We are going to give the annotation set a name. We are just going to call it clusters for now. Which data category the annotations are and the data type. And we get annotation set with an ID 50 out of this. After that, we upload the annotation values. So here I have uploaded cluster numbers for all of the 171 molecules. And you can also delete the annotation sets if you did a mistake or want to do the clustering again. So that's also possible programmatically. Okay, let's actually see our data set that we created from Python. So I'm going to open this one. And this also, because the query has contains the viewers, and that analysis part is automated, so we get the same viewers here. And if we now actually go back to the query, I can retrieve my clusters here. So they are in compounds and small molecule annotations and API training workspace. And let's put them also in my query. And this is also an important part if you have D360 users that do not want to touch the Python code and do not want to see it, but maybe they are interested in the results. So here they can have their results in a D360 dataset and maybe visualize them. Let's see how many molecules I have in each cluster with a histogram. Let's modify my axis to be categorical, so it makes a bit more sense. Yes, so then I get the number of molecules in each cluster, and this also confirms that the calculations I did were pretty much nonsense, because there's only clearly one cluster and very small clusters otherwise, so it doesn't really seem very sensible to use only 10 clusters or use so much clusters. All right. Okay, so your data scientists are probably better than mine, and they make very nice models that predict something useful. So when you have those models, you of course want to make them available and also make them user-friendly. So that's also where we have a product available. So let's see the whole figure. So we have a product called Calculation Server, and it's an add-on product to D360. And the point of the Calculation Server is to really provide an interface for the models, machine learning models, but also any type of web services that you might have in-house. And what the calculation server does is to provide a central accessing point and also a uniform uniform API to use in D360, but also in any application. And because one important thing here is that it's a calculation caching server, so it caches the results. So that means that if different users request the same molecule, it's not recalculated every time, but it's instead retrieved from the cache. So that really provides value in the user experience, that they don't have to wait for so long, and also it reduces the computational resource requirements. So that's additional service there. Okay, then let's look at the other part of the data science workflow, which is even more important, which is the share and communicate part. So exploring the data and really sharing it with the scientists that are the users of the models is very important, that they also want to understand the data and explore the results. So here we really focus on visualization. So the D360's visualization framework already has a lot of key views and visualization options that you can use to make sense out of this data. So there is the spreadsheets, forms, and other types of viewers that are specific to the research data, and then a more general type of graphs, so histograms, bar charts, box plots, scatter plots, you name it. And also domain specific for small molecules is the R group matrix view, for example. And here the plugins can really also extend the visualization capabilities. So the plugins have custom JavaScript that they can run. So one mention here is maybe we are going to add spider plots in the future, which is quite exciting. And here it's also good to note that this, when you use D360 and programmatic languages, also people, all of the people can access the queries, but also people that don't know how to program can still explore the data and make visualizations. So even with all these visualization options and perhaps custom plugins that you might be interested in developing, you can actually use the REST API also to build visualizations on top of datasets and queries. So here I also have an example of heat maps. So heat maps are not available in D360 yet, but they also provide quite a nice overview of the activities or whatever you display. So here I'm using actually the same query. The query runs when I launch at the application, and this is actually interactive, so I can increase my primary activity cutoff to 100 and get a bit more molecules. And also my text element will then tell me how many molecules I have under the cutoff. And this is a very good way of seeing how the selectivity profile of the different activities. So here we can, with the hierarchical clustering in both rows and columns, you easily find the molecules that are actually specific to your CSARC kinase, which is only 2 here. They don't have very good primary activity, but they are seem very selective, so those are quite good candidates. So this is an R-Shiny app that are very popular nowadays with data scientists. So if you have people that can do R programming, they might be really interested in doing building interactive visualization based on datasets. And these are quite fast to make, so you really get into really advance the insights quite fast. So, and of course, that's what I showed was a web app, and with web apps and dashboard thinking, you can really start going wild. So if you really build a web application that is connected to the REST API, you have full freedom and flexibility on how to present and view your data. So of course, this can be even full web application programming, but it can also be a data dashboard program that is then just connected to the D360 REST API. So there are already available platforms that might just be a plugin thing. So that's the content that I had for today. So I hope you got a good idea of how D360 works as the central data engine connecting to different data sources. So relational databases or web services, and can D360 then handles the access point and security layers, helps in collaboration between departments and disciplines, and then also sharing the insights and creating the insights from the data. And you don't have to be restricted to the client application that comes with D360, but you can really think of building on top of the application server and accessing the data programmatically and starting from there. Yes, thank you for your attention, and I hope to have a lot of questions, please.
Yeah, thank you, Essi. Excellent. We indeed have some questions, and as a reminder, please feel free to submit your questions through the chat. We will address them. Let me give you the first question, Essi, that came from the audience. How can I access the API?
Yes, good question. So all users can access the API, but there is, with newer versions, the documentation is provided in a Swagger interface, and that Swagger interface is controlled with a permission group. So if a user is added to the permission group that can see the Swagger API page, then you can really see what endpoints are available. So even, I mean, you can access the API, but if you don't know what the endpoints are, it's quite hard. All users can create service tokens that are used to access that, and then if they again have the documentation and the information of the API, then they can use that. So here we also recommend to have an API training course first. So that's a service that we offer, and then with the training course we really go through of these workflows, and also provide all the material and information of where the things are and how they work, and what you should consider when you use the API.
Okay, great, thank you. There was another question asking if we are going to provide a recording. Yes, we will. We will send to all attendees a link to that webinar on our page on Certara.com. You will receive it in the next few days. There was another question. Let me pull this up here. What programming languages can I use with the API?
Yeah, so the REST API is very standard design, and it uses HTTP, which is usually what REST APIs use. So all programming languages that support HTTP can be used. So that's probably most of them. So what we have experience in-house is Python, and of course our client is using Java and also JavaScript. So that's where we can help you with, but all other programming languages work as well, or most of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. And the third question also came through, addressing if do I need an additional license to use the API?
So all users that are D360 users can use the API. So there is no additional license for that. So that's included in the product, not in D360 Express, but the general or basic D360. But also, if you have users that would only use the API, they still need a D360 license. And it's not included in D360 for D360 partner users. So that's the summary of it.
Okay. Yeah. I see no more questions from the audience. Feel free also to reach out after the event to Essi directly or to the D360 team to ask your questions. I think we don't have any more from the audience, so we can wrap it up for today. Again, thank you, Essi, for the great presentation.
Thank you for your attention.
Thank you for your attention and for the interaction, for the engagement to the audience. And we will speak to you soon. Thank you. Bye.